The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our review of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. This is part 2 of our look at the Guardian cards. We are going to discuss Motivational Speech, One in the Chamber, Fighting Lessons, and Helping Hand. There are spoilers throughout, if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or cards that are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are simply bad for the big game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these player card reviews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Trity for the amazing art that graces the channel, Nicole Fiscus for the Whisper in Darkness logo, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for the intro as well as the overlays. Thank you very much. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, Arkham Horror fans, to our review of the Guardian cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. We're going to start off with Motivational Speech. It is a free event with a willpower and intellect skill icon. Spirit trait, Parlay. Choose an investigator at your location. That investigator may play an ally asset from their hand, reducing its cost by 3. This pretty much does for allies what Uncage the Soul does for spells, and I played the hell out of Uncage the Soul, and I expect to play the hell out of this card if I'm playing allies.
Yeah, this thing's solid. Looking at it, I want to compare it to Uncage the Soul, as you said, and of course compare it to Emergency Cash. So like Uncage the Soul, the fact that it gets the ally down in the same action as you playing the event, that's really good. So it's like saving you a whole action there. This card's really good, actually, and I think I wouldn't play it unless I was running like 4 or more allies, so I'm thinking like Leo Anderson or Charlie Kane, which pictured right here. I also think there's a case in like some survivors, like Calvin, for example, because it is a spirit event. Calvin can take this, because survivors can often run like, you know, a suite of multiple allies. Wow, like any investigator who wants to run like Charisma could really make use of this, because allies, there's some expensive allies out there, like Greta. Yeah,
Tommy Muldoon's another one who would...
because he profits.
He does.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, because he can like play a guard dog for 0, and then when the guard dog is defeated, he can like net money. He can net resources from that. I like that. I like this. This is good. And then on top of it, just to top it off, like I don't think the card even needed this, but the fact that if you've already got your ally slots filled, you can like let a friend play an ally. And let's be honest, every investigator deck, well, maybe not every, but a lot of investigator decks want to have allies, and a lot of allies are 3 cost or more. So you can help your friends with this. Wow, this is really good. Like, I like this card.
Yeah, it's also nice that it's actually a little bit better than Uncage the Soul in some ways, because you can choose an investigator at your location, where Uncage the Soul is limited to spells or, I believe, rituals that you are playing yourself. Yep. The parlay action is nice because it doesn't trigger attacks of opportunity.
Exactly. It's not a play, it's a parlay.
Which is a huge boon. And, I mean, Guardians have a lot of very expensive allies. And
the fact that it doesn't provoke. Oh, that's even better than I thought, because what often happens is like in the Mythos phase, you know, you draw an enemy and then you're kind of trapped, you know, because you're provoking attacks of opportunity if you're not ready to shoot the thing, for example. But like you could just play your guard dog without provoking attack of opportunity. You could play a beat cop without provoking attacks of opportunity. You could play Brother Xavier without and then Brother Xavier is ready to take the damage, or like Tetsuo Mori. Wow, this card's really good.
Yeah. How would you rate this one?
I don't think I'm ready to go Elder Sign, because it's I don't think this goes in every deck, but this is a solid +1. This card's good. Like if your deck is going to include like 4 or more allies as card slots, then I think this is totally worth it. And I love how it scales up well in multiplayer.
This one gets a +1 from me as well. If you're playing allies, which most decks are, If you're playing expensive Guardian allies, which most Guardians are, if you're playing this with any of the other ally tech, like calling in favors and stuff like that, you can play an ally for cheap, bounce it to your hand to play another ally for cheap. There's all sorts of tricks that you can do there. Of course, this is a good excuse for Charlie Kane to go Guardian. Now, when I was building Charlie before the set was released, I tended to lean Charlie as a survivor pretty hard because he needed the survivor card pool to survive. So I'm glad to see that they sort of have spread out a little bit and given him a reason to explore some of the other colors that are open to him. But yeah, this is much like Uncage the Soul before it. This is very, very solid. No complaints. The next card we're going to take a look at is One in the Chamber. It's a 1-cost event with a combat and agility skill icon, fortune and tactic trait. Fast, play at the end of an attack or effect that spends the last ammo from a firearm asset you control. Add 1 ammo to that asset. You get +3 skill value for your next attack with that asset this round. Thoughts on One in the Chamber?
So yeah, I was thinking about this one quite a bit. I want to compare it immediately to not custom ammunition, because that's 3 XP and that's a lot, but extra ammunition. Extra ammunition costs 2, it's 1 XP, and it adds 2 ammo to an asset at the cost of an action. I think I actually like this more than that because it's fast. And with custom ammunition, because it provokes attacks of opportunity. So if you run out of bullets, you got to spend another action to reload, and you got to take an attack of opportunity to reload. Where this, you could just mid-turn, just reload. That's before the +3 skill value bit. Like, I'm just thinking if it was just fast, add an ammo, I kind of like it already. Once you get XP, I would recommend maybe replacing it with custom ammo, because that's just super good, and it's also fast. Or swift reload if you have access to that, because it's also fast. But at 0 XP, I think this is pretty solid.
Yeah, there aren't... I think this is one of only 3 cards at level 0 that give you extra ammo. The other 2 being the horrendously expensive Contraband from the Dunwich Legacy and Venturer, the ally from the Forgotten Age. And
who takes up an ally slot.
Ally slot. So that's not viable for most investigators. So yeah, fast, you get 1 ammo. That's pretty appealing if you just need 1 more shot. And I mean, in the case of the big guns, that's almost often half the guns magazine as it is. So that's pretty good. Having an extra ammo at fast speed is going to be invaluable, especially if you need just that 1 more shot in order to take down the enemy that's harassing you suddenly, rather than be stuck in that situation where, like, okay, well, now I've got to fight it hand to hand, or I've got to like take an attack so I can play my other gun. This gets you out of that jam. Now the timing is a little wonky sometimes, because you do sort of need that. You got to shoot it and still have an action left if you want to get that +3 attack with the next attack. But that's
even
pretty nice
that,
as well.
It's still pretty good.
Yeah,
I'd say. Yeah,
and that's nice, especially for those succeed by X weapons like the 41 Derringer, where it's just like, now you're getting a benefit on top of the extra ammo as well, where depending on what effect you're trying to trigger, I think what does the core one do?
Just
core one's bonus damage. The other
damage.
The upgrade is bonus action. So which is I mean, get an extra fast ammo, then trigger your upgraded Derringer to get an extra action, which might actually get you out of the situation that you're in. That's pretty nice.
I like this card. The only thing I think that counts against it is the fact that a card slot is kind of a lot in Guardians, because they don't have lots and lots of card draw. I think that's the only thing that pulls this down. But I think if you compare it to extra ammunition, I like this card a lot.
So how'd you rate this one?
Okay. So under the conditions that it only works in firearms. So basically what I'm saying is, this of course deserves a bless because, all cards deserve blesses in the right decks. But like I think in a general case that involves firearms, I think I'd give this thing a +1 actually. Because you want to play guns, you're gonna run out of ammo. This is gonna give you a bullet at the cost of one resource and not an action. That's pretty good. Yeah, I'll give this a +1.
Yeah, I was debating between a 0 and a +1 simply because, I mean, we've been playing this game for 6 years and Guardians have survived this long without having an extra bullet at the weighting. But I think if you're playing guns or a gun, depending on the gun, this could be half the ammo that you started with, which is pretty good. I think I'll settle on a +1. I think if you're playing any sort of gun, having like even just a copy, I don't know if I'd play 2 copies of this, but I think 1 copy, just, for those situations where you end up needing that final shot to take down an enemy would be very helpful.
Yeah, that being said, I wouldn't necessarily include this thinking that you're going to get the +3 every time because you don't control when you run out of bullets. You just and the one thing I do like about this card is that even if you scratch off the bit about the +3 skill value, it's still pretty good, which is what lands me on +1 in the first place.
The next card we're going to take a look at is Fighting Lessons. It is a skill with a combat, agility, and wild skill icon practice trait. Commit only to a skill test during an attack or evasion attempt. You can commit this skill to an investigator's test at any location. This is one of the cards that I was fortunate enough to spoil heading into the release of the Scarlet keys. And yeah, it's one of the very few, if only, card that you can commit to a skill test at any location, barring, min shenanigans.
Yeah.
It's, if you're tight on deck slots, it's either 2 combat skill icons or 2 agility skill icons, depending on what you need. It has the practiced trait, which synergizes with practice makes perfect. The only sort of downside is I think daring is a viable alternative to this in most Guardians, who would be, if you're not interested in the helping out other investigators at other locations, then I'd probably end up playing daring. But what do you think about this one?
In fact, I think you've pretty much hit the nail right on the head, is that daring is good and daring is exists. So where I think this card gets its place is, let's say you just want to load up on skill cards and you have your 2 overpowers, you have your 2 darings, and you want overpowered number 3 and overpowered number 4, then you can take this. I think this is where that kind of shines. Similarly with manual dexterity, if you're looking for manual dexterity number 3 or manual dexterity number 4, then I think this is where that shines, because just the fact that it's effectively 2 combat or 2 agility icons, I think that's not bad by itself. The fact that it can do either or, I'm talking with like a blank text box. I think it's not bad, but not like, I wouldn't kick out daring for this. So if you don't own daring, or you're looking for like overpower number 3 or manual dexterity number 3, then I think this is where that fills in.
The solo player in me basically looks at this and like you can commit this skill to investigator tests at other locations is meaningless. So
yeah, but at least so if you're on your own, the fact that you could effectively have 4 manual dexterities maybe isn't too bad. So you could like 2 darings, 2 manual dexterities, and maybe 2 of this, and then you're set to evade. Yeah, that's not too bad if you've got the spots for it. But I don't see it kicking out other established options.
So what do you think that pointing stick is? Is it a wand or is it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It because I actually did some research, contacted the artist, and it turns out that this card was used as concept art for the Arkham Harry Potter crossover.
Right. The one guy's got the gun and the other guy's got the wand, and they're about to.
Yep, Leo is literally about to say Expelliarmus, and That's what happened. I think what might have happened there is like the artist had to last minute like paint over Leo's face there. Like you can kind of see with like the kid, you can see how it's like he's in the shadow and it's not really clear who the kid is. But what it looks like what happened there is that it was like some other dude. Maybe it was like Harry Potter's dad who was like originally in the and he had to originally there and then the artist had to like paint over Harry Potter's dad's face with Leo Anderson's because you can see how like clear and crisp Leo's face is. Look at how wrinkled that brow is. He's just like he's looking off into the distance because you could see like you could look at his eye lines there. Like he is not actually pointing at the same thing that the kid's pointing at. Which so it's like you got the wand over here, and then you've got the gun going like that way. You know, so they're pointing at two different targets is what's going on here. You could just look from the eye lines.
How would you rate this one?
Probably an elder thing. Yeah. It's hard to like I don't see this being as anything but like card number 30 or card number 29, in a deck that really just wants that some more icons. Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to go that low. I think I'm going to stick at 0. I mean, if it's, overpower 3 and 4 manual
Yeah.
decks, 3 or 4, I don't think you're doing yourself a disservice by putting this card in your deck, especially if you
Yeah, that's fair.
if you like skills. So, I mean, it's a nice card to have if you've got nothing else to play.
Yeah.
I think the probably the toughest thing for this card is, like you said, just cracking the lineup at all,
Yeah.
because there's just so many options that,
Yep. Also keep
you
in mind we
know,
have defensive stance now from Edge of the Earth.
yeah, like
And
just having,
yeah.
a couple of skill icons isn't really enough anymore
Yeah.
to do it. And so many skills these days, like especially since Edge of the Earth, skill icons on skills have just proliferated
Yeah.
to very high numbers, and so one that just gives you 2 and 2 is not as
It's
appealing as it might have been a couple
Yeah,
years
it's not the
ago.
worst. I have run Beloved from Innsmouth Conspiracy for the exact same purpose of having effectively, I think in my case, it was Guts number 3 and Guts number 4. I have done that before to decent effect. I see the viability of Overpower number 3 and Overpower number 4. That being said, Daring exists. So what kind of rating are you going to give it?
I gave it a 0. I think it's fine. It's a card. It's you're not. I if we sat down at a table and you were to play it, I'd be like, okay, well, it's perfectly. I wouldn't be like, oh dear God, why does he have that in
Yeah,
his deck?
yeah, that's true.
Which we
And then you
can't
get
say
to
about some cards.
And what you could do is you get to like go out and have beers over the fact that I committed it to a skill test, even though I wasn't at your location.
That's
And then you get
right.
to go like, oh,
That's
it
right.
actually happened.
Get to blow my
Wow.
mind.
Yeah, it actually happened.
I thought I was
And we get to talk
dead.
about the artwork. So, oh yeah, here's the thing. The artwork, is that like a good part of the card, or is it like a negative for the card that every time you play it, you have to discuss the artwork?
I think it's a positive
It's
because,
positive?
I
Okay.
mean, the artwork can be interpreted different ways. I mean,
Okay.
sure, it could be that he's helping the young lad there aim properly, or it could be a wand, which I think is the
I'm going with
better,
the wand.
which is the
Yeah.
better explanation, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'm
so
going
you've
with
got
the
an old
wand.
man with his wand and a kid with a gun, and they're, I don't know, what are they? Maybe a Shoggoth or something like that. But
Well, if you look in the background there, you see, and this is another thing that's great about this card. Look at that tree. That reminds me of like Africa,
yeah, they're
right?
definitely in
Are they
Africa.
shooting at like an elephant?
That's right. The kids get to shoot at it, and the old guys get to shrivel it, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
the elephant won't know what hit him. The next card we're going to talk about is Helping Hand. It has it's a guardian skill with the innate trait. You may commit Helping Hand to any type of test, max 1 committed per test. While Helping Hand is committed to a skill test, double the skill icons of each other card committed to that test. This was one of the cards that was spoiled way back when the Scarlet Keys preview article was released. What do you think about this one?
so I kind of wish. So the main problem I have with this card is from a multiplayer setting, is that you are still limited to committing a single card to a friend's skill test. This provides nothing by itself when you're doing that. So what's going to happen is, I'm just going to see this happen, is I'm going to be like, I want to commit guts to help you with your rotting remains test. Oh, but I want to give you more icons, but I can't because even though I've committed guts and then helping hand, I can't because I'm at my one card limit. I kind of wish it was like an event for that reason. I think the fact that it's a skill card is actually like holding it back. So and as a result, I think this makes this thing like overly restrictive. Like I don't like this card as a result. I would be playing Unexpected Courage like every time over this. I gotta admit, it's just so narrow.
Yeah, this is a strange one. It didn't make a huge impression on me when it was spoiled way back when, and I don't
Just
know.
play, just run a card with icons on it instead.
Yeah,
And that way you can always help. Because you're gonna hit a situation where like the only skill card you have in your hand is Helping Hand, when you could have just had matching icons already. And then you're adding another two or three even. Yeah, just
yeah. See
by
that? See,
having it.
that's where I think this card really hurts. Is those
Yeah,
particular situations where it's just like, I'm down to my last skill card. Oh, it's Helping Hand.
it's like
Okay, well now
that's
I'm
it.
I'm hooped
Yeah, it
because
it doesn't do anything.
if this
Yeah,
had any other icons on it, I might be like one wild icon even would be better. Now, the other reason I'm not a huge fan of this card is largely because most tests don't require that many boosts to
yes,
pass, and so
that's true.
you're unless you're trying to succeed by X or do something like that, okay, you commit guts, I throw in Helping Hand, now you're up for,
Yeah, that's what it's trying to do. Yeah,
most investigators don't necessarily need
right.
that number of skill icons to pass things.
Yeah, at that
And
point you're just
so,
winning more,
yeah,
by overshooting. And even though like as we were just discussing earlier with fighting lessons, we have cards like especially after Edge of the Earth, like you can overshoot with a single card now. You don't need Helping Hand and another card to overshoot.
hmm.
Yeah. I
Now
would like I
this,
would I would run Take the Initiative and Daring over this,
oh yeah, no,
and
I
Unexpected Courage. Take,
see, I that's the thing, like I don't know what I take out to run this, because there are
I
just
think
so
that
many good Guardian skills right now. I mean, you've just
yeah,
mentioned a few of them: Daring, Take the Initiative,
Steadfast even. Like Steadfast
Steadfast.
can have three willpower on it. Like, and that's like your copy 3 and 4 of Guts, with 3 willpower. So it's like now you're looking at Guts number 5 and 6, and then no, nah. If it were okay, I could see it having I could see it having a place if it were honestly if it were Seeker, because Seekers have so much card draw that they can hit that point where they're over committing and like I'm thinking like a Min deck, could probably make good use of this, but Min can't take it. And I do wish it was an event, because I think the fact that you're only limited to committing one card to a friend's skill test really hurts this card. Because then even if you're set with multiple skill cards in your hand, you can't do it,
Yeah.
with for friends. Yeah.
Well, I would be remiss if we didn't mention the combo here with Bestow Resolve and the Desperate skills. You've mentioned a couple times that you can't use this and commit another card to the skill test. You can do that with a combination of Bestow Resolve, which is a card we'll look at a little bit later, which basically allows you
Oh.
to spend a charge and commit a card to your hand to a skill test.
Oh, yeah, and
And
that would break the limit.
and it
Yeah.
replaces all of that icon with wild skill icons. So the trick is you spend a charge, throw a desperate skill at somebody. They don't need to have the restriction comes off the desperate skill. They get 4 wild
Right.
skill icons. You Helping Hand it to 8. I could see. I mean, that's
Yeah.
in that
That is
situation, Helping Hand starts to look better. But that's
yeah.
that's a
But then you've
combo. So
Yeah, and that's the thing, like bestow resolve, something like that, where it's like it breaks the limit and does something by itself. That's that's more like it. So like even in the same box, there's like things that do the job better.
How would you rate this one?
Auto fail, don't play this.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wasn't
like
expecting that.
yeah, this is just the card pool is big enough that like okay, so the card pool is getting big enough that the floor for like a card's viability is getting it's I'm not saying it's getting like high, but it's not as low as it used to be. And when I'm talking about this comparing it to unexpected courage, like that's like auto fail territory. Like you've got people like were you've got deck builders like having trouble fitting unexpected courage into decks, and that's like one of the best cards in the game because it always works. So like a card that doesn't always work, is it's tough to justify. And then even then, it's not like it's gonna like work all the time, and it's just don't play this. Play something else. Play Take the Initiative or Steadfast or Helping Hand or like any of a zillion other cards that that already exist over this.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm gonna give it an elder thing. I think. I mean, it does a thing.
Yeah.
It's not the. I mean, it will do something and probably help you pass a skill test. It's not a card that I think I will end up playing, simply because I've never needed to double the skill icons on anything in the past and have done pretty well. So it's not like this is necessarily going to make the cut. I think if you're using it in combination with Bestow Resolve, there's something there. But again, if you're using Bestow Resolve and a Desperate skill, you're already supplying 4 wild skill icons to somebody. Like, how many wild skill icons do you honestly need to pass a skill
exactly.
test? Like, Promise of Power does plenty on its own. And so having many Promises of Power at your disposal in that sort of deck is
yeah. Plus, Bestow Resolve, you get to stack on effects of the skill card.
yeah.
Which this does not. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll go Elder Thing, and we'll call it a day there. That's going to do it for part 2 of our look at the Guardian cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Any final thoughts on this batch of cards?
So I see we've got a few now where we're starting to see a theme of cards that are like very narrow and kind of restrictive, and that doesn't always work out, is what I'm getting at. You have cards that are kind of narrow and restrictive, like one in the chamber, where it can only be used on a firearm, but it still works because it's still good value. But then you got stuff like Helping Hand, where it's kind of narrow and kind of restrictive, and it like there's not value there. So I think this is gonna be an issue throughout the entire box. I gotta admit, spoiler alert, guys. I think there's a lot of these.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about before we started to record how, and I think we sort of reached this point last cycle, or even the cycle before that, was where the design space is getting narrower and narrower between like creating a card that is genuinely useful and sort of just missing the mark and creating something that's way overpowered. And so to avoid creating things that are way overpowered, we're getting these very niche cards that are good in certain situations, but the narrowness of them, just we have so many good generally useful cards that those narrow cards just like, yes you can play them. You're not doing your deck a disservice by putting them in and using them. But when you just look at the options, it's like, say with Fighting Lessons, right? It's like, well, I could play Fighting Lessons, or I could play Daring, or any of the other skills that we've received. We received in Edge of the Earth and stuff like that. And so it just sort of, you kind of look at them and you're like, well, it's playable, but
I've already got daring, and it universally works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that is
so
going to be a problem. As especially, and I noticed this was already starting to happen with cards like Voice of Ra and 21 or Bust, cards that seem like they're balanced around the ideal happening rather than the typical happening. And I think Helping Hand is a prime example of somebody somewhere saying, "Oh my God, I can double someone's promise of power," and then they had to like nerf it down somehow. Yeah, the problem is cards like that are not actually very good. The ones that where the on paper is of a specific circumstance. Yeah.
well, we are going to dive into the experience cards here in the next two parts of our Guardian review, and I hope you'll stay tuned for that. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.